The Extraordinary Phenomenon Investigations Council presents Epic Voyages. Come join us as we enter and experience the great mysteries of the world with tonight's host,
Kevin Cook.
Good evening. This is Kevin Cook for Epic Voyagers. I'm your host tonight. We're going to have some news stories first, and we'll get William on here, and we'll go as planned. But this is live radio, and things don't always work the way they should, like they is normal in life. Now, there's been some news items we need to talk about, and the first one, you may be familiar with, if you listen to my show, A Conspiracy Journal. Was a guest, Tim Schwartz, last week, and he's a frequent guest on my shows, the Kevin Cook Show on Tuesday, and he had this very fascinating piece here. There's a lady named Faye Aldridge who wrote Real Messages from Heaven, and here's what it is, guys. This speaks of her deceased husband appearing to two of his doctors, a Dr. Cushman and a Dr. Willis, who both independently verify that in essence this Faye Aldridge's husband appeared to them respectively after his death. And neither of these two doctors, though they had seen this guy in the hospital, neither of these two guys were aware of his death. I mean, it's one of those things where the guy had cancer and he had a couple attending physicians. These were a couple of them, and they weren't there on hands when the guy was dying. In any case, this is the best corroboration of an item like this there's probably ever been. Two doctors who would ostensibly be, dignified and respectable witnesses, who didn't have an axe to grind. They're not making any money off the book, and, doctors charge enough. They're, medical bandits anyway. They don't need the money from, book sales. What I'm saying is there's no vested interest here. This is a very, very well-authenticated story, probably the best there's ever been. And I urge you to go ahead and get Conspiracy Journal, and you can read the piece in there. Now, of course, there's since the last show we talked, the last one I did on Epic was June 25th with Jesse Ventura, and I urge you all to go ahead and listen to the podcast on that if you missed the show. Jesse's a very good guest, and he had a lot to say about our weird little world we've got. And but in any case, since the last time I talked to you, of course, we've had the Aurora, Colorado shooting, very big tragedy, of course. Everybody knows about that at this point. But one question that should be raised, and was raised by CBS News tonight, is where did this guy get the $14,000 to $15,000 to buy all these weapons and ammunition? I mean, I know of a fellow who was trading guns just as a part-time job. I mean, he wasn't a terrorist or anything. And the FBI came and visited him, and he didn't have near the amount of stuff this guy had. So anyway, that's a big question. We should maybe have some answers on that. And just lastly, tonight, of course, I come from not very far from Penn State, and obviously that's a terrible situation. I would like to see not just Penn State slapped on the rear end as far as the football team, with some sanctions by the NCAA, sure, whatever, that's fine. But I would like to see some prosecutions in this. 4 of the highest level officials of Penn State University were complicit in this, and this is disgusting. I mean, these people, and I don't want to hear any nonsense about any redirect from like that redheaded coach that was a witness against Sandusky about, well, I told the dean of students. Well, now wait a minute. You're going to go see a child that's being molested, and you're going to go call the dean of students? I mean, I don't think so. You're not going to do that. You're going to, if you're any kind of human, you just run in there and lay into Sandusky and crack his head against the wall or something. At least call a cop. you're definitely not going to call the dean of students. Anyhow, there needs to be some prosecutions in this. And, you know, of course, I've mentioned on other shows, people familiar with me, I'm a devout Catholic and all that, but I think there need to be some prosecutions by some hierarchy of the Catholic Church for moving these pedophile priests around in the same venue. That's seems to me a violation of the RICO Act, and they could be convicted like tomorrow. So at any rate, there needs to be some action on this, and I know this is a show on the paranormal, but if this ain't paranormal, buddy, there ain't any paranormal. Now, the next, once again, I urge you to listen to the Ventura show from the 25th. And tomorrow night, my own show, Kevin Cook. I'll have Cook show at the same time. I'll have Rich Roberts. He's with the International Policemen's Union, and we're going to talk about Scranton, Pennsylvania, policemen making minimum wage, and the resultant overflow from that. And in the second half, Nikki Van Valkenburg will talk about defeating ADHD and boosting our minds. And boy, my mind could use boosting. Mr. Mott, how are you doing? Are you with us now?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. I'm sorry we had a little confusion on the front end. Usually we call the guests about 10 minutes before the hour. And anyhow, William, it's good to talk to you. You've got some very interesting material.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Where are you located?
Currently, I'm in Mississippi.
Oh, yeah, Mississippi. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I remember the area code now. Yeah, very, very nice state. I used to go travel through there on sales periodically.
Okay. Are you guys in Texas?
Well, I'm in Texas. The show's broadcast out of Chicago.
Oh, okay. Great.
I'm trapped here in Texas. That's just a cross I have to bear. But, but you know, at least they've got a good economy here. It may be burned up as toast, but it's people.
Hey, at least it's still going.
It's going. It really is, and surprisingly so. I hate to say it above a whisper, afraid I'll jinx it, but it looks like it's going to be a boom in construction in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in the next 2 years, and that's pretty bizarre, but I'll take it. My primary business is in selling large trees, and I do this out of for some financial rewards, but not that much.
Right.
We have a gigantic show, but the radio business is a strange business. It really is. We had 287,000 listeners last week, and we have to chase after advertisers like we were Aunt Susie's radio show. So it's just there is no justice sometimes. But I know I really was caught with some of the information you've dealt with. Tell the audience, give me your website and some of the books that you've written, William.
Well, sure. My website is www.mottimorphic.com. That's MOTTIMORPHIC, Mottimorphic, sort of a play on metamorphic, mottimorphic.com. And you can find links to all my books there, some other projects, some artwork, because I also work professionally as an artist, graphic designer, illustrator. But I have a number of books that are linked there to my publisher at Grave Distractions Publications. And I have everything from fiction to pulp fiction to Fortean studies. Primarily, 2 books in that area are probably of interest to your listeners. One is called Caverns, Cauldrons, and Concealed Creatures, and the other is called This Tragic Earth. So, that's right now. That's what I've got going on. I've got a short story.
I got to take my hat off to you. I really do.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, I've written one book, and golly, it was such an effort. It was like mining coal. As a matter of fact, I prefer to mine coal. And it wasn't that I'm illiterate. It's just editing is just not for me. I can do it, yes, but I don't like it. And I have to take my hat off to people that can write prolifically like you do. It's just,
well, I appreciate it. Yeah, and so, the thing is that, as you probably know, one of the important things to writing is to find the time to write.
Yes.
Without being interrupted.
Yes, but what I would do is I'd find reasons to procrastinate. I don't care what I had to do. Stack rocks, anything, just don't write. But it came in spurts, I guess. That's part of it. But, I guess The Caverns, Cauldrons, and Concealed Creatures, that's a heck of a title.
Well, yeah, it's sort of what it really is. It's hopefully a logical look at a lot of the so-called paranormal and strange mysteries that people are so fascinated with today. These things are really very ancient. They've always been around. Not a single one of the things that you see, TV shows about now that people are so fascinated with, not one of those things is a new thing. In some form or related form or with another interpretation, they've always been around. And it's I take a look at everything from pop culture to folklore, folk traditions, comparative myth and religion, actual, eyewitness accounts and things of this nature, and try to find an underlying explanation, because a lot of these things really seem to have a common origin or related origins, and they seem to be a lot closer to home, and they always have been, as opposed to coming from the other side of the galaxy.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing that's always intrigued me is, the long-standing nature of a lot of these phenomena. Like I've mentioned on other shows, like relative to the UFO phenomenon, that there's the painting in Italy that's been in constant custody of a museum for 500 years, painting of the Madonna. In the background, it has a disc-shaped UFO.
Right.
I mean, it's not ambiguous. It just is what it is.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, it's just, there's no way anybody's imagination could have intruded into that. It's just bizarre, and it's, like I say, 500 years old. And
well, it goes back further than that. When Alexander the Great was, I'm trying to remember which city it was. It may have been Damascus. I may be wrong about that. There was a city in the Middle East that he had laid siege to, and he could not gain entry into the city. Of course, he believed that he was a son of a god and a mortal woman. And while he was laying siege to the city, his chroniclers recorded that everybody was astonished when flying metal shields showed up in the sky, and they threw lightning bolts and destroyed the walls of the city so his army could enter. Later in India, when he needed to cross a river in India, flying silver shields, metal shields, came and went from the river. This phenomenon has been around ever since human beings have been around. It's just a matter of interpretation. If you want to see it as gods, devils, fallen angels, Nephilim, it's all just a matter of context and definition. And it seems like it's something that takes a great delight in playing with our perceptions and our attempts to lock it in.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because there was a book, the Skinwalker Ranch, Colin Kelleher and George Knapp wrote it a few years back, and about all the kinds of comings and goings on this Utah ranch. That Bob Bigelow, the big Vegas developer, bought it, and he funded an outfit called NIDS, National Discovery Science or whatever, National Institute for Discovery Science, I guess it was. And in essence, they had an 8-year study of this ranch where all this weird phenomenology would happen. Bigfoot, a 400-pound wolf, they put rounds from a 30-06 and it didn't phase it, and all UFOs, all the whole gambit of things. But I guess related to what you just said, though, Knapp wrote in the book that there was kind of an element of the tricksterism about this thing, almost like some kind of intelligence was playing with them while they were investigating this site. And this is probably the best investigated site there ever was.
It really is. I read that book, and that is an excellent book, and it does point out, at least when I read it, it seemed to indicate that, again, we're dealing with something that's really has its origin near at hand. The interesting thing that you find with all such encounters, first of all, time and time again, and this is historic, this goes back in every folk tradition, every religion, every anecdotal account, time and time, or nearly every account, time and again, UFOs have been seen entering and leaving lakes, rivers, oceans, and somehow going into the earth or the ground, as in, for instance, in the Central America, where they come and go from volcanoes and are videotaped. That people see them doing this and catch it on videotape, and so on. This is interesting insofar as even ancient texts tell us, the dark places of the earth are the habitations of cruelty, and down under the earth are the people of old time. And of course, that's from the Old Testament. But the Hindu scriptures tell us the same thing. That the Naga or serpent people, who are humanoid, but they predate humanity. They have flying disc-shaped craft, and they live underground. We keep hearing these same things, seeing these same patterns again and again. And when you look at the interaction of these, or the alleged interactions of such beings with humanity, you find it almost overwhelming interest on their part to make sure that we believe that they come from up there. They don't come from here. They don't come from under the mountain range or
you're
under
saying
the
they're
ocean.
trying to deceive us as far as where they're coming from?
Absolutely, because if you look at what they do, they consistently go out of their way to frame things in a point of reference so that people will believe they come from far away. And there are a lot of problems with that. A lot of logical problems, a lot of scientific problems, and a lot of historical problems. In terms of geologic time, what are the odds for all these seemingly different races that people claim to see ending up here at more or less the same time, geologically speaking?
Seems unlikely, sure.
Yeah, it's just not likely. When you look at this, you'll see that, for instance, okay, if these guys are from another star system, for instance, and they can travel at light speed or faster, or they can warp space and time, or whatever their little thing is that lets them hop around the galaxy. Okay, if they can do that, and they come here allegedly, with an excuse, they supposed to have all these excuses, genetic damage that they want to repair, or whatever their deal is.
Right.
If they were that advanced, they could resequence their own DNA.
Sure,
they could repair themselves.
Stem cells are right almost in our hand. Another 20 years.
Exactly. We're almost at that point ourselves.
Sure.
And so, you see all these fallacies and these logical errors that are in everything that they do and say, but they've been at it for such a long time that for the majority of human history, they pretty much had us hornswoggled.
Could be.
Where we go along with whatever they say, we believe it, because when you're faced with something so outrageous, first of all you're stunned, and then second of all, you're not going to be thinking, completely objectively when this is going on, and probably not right afterward either. And that's just human nature. And when you think about the supposed appearances of the majority of these beings, they always conform to what is really an earthly vertebrate template. They have 2 arms, 2 legs, a central trunk, 1 head and 1 neck, binocular vision, which is that's a predatory trait, just like we have, or a lion or whatever. I mean, when the eyes are in the front of the head, that's something that is more or less predatory in nature. And they're either mammalian, reptilian, or a combination thereof, or even, if you take an objective look at it, we have a biodiversity here on this planet where we have everything from that loud dog you probably hear barking outside my door to crabs and hermit crabs and elephant seals and
a little everything, yeah.
Maasai warriors, yeah. And if you were from another planet, or you would say you'd never even seen these things before, you were highly protected from reality, and all of a sudden you saw these different life forms, you might assume that some of these more outrageous looking life forms can't possibly come from the same biosphere, but they do. And so it's not much of a stretch to think that these beings are just another product of the same genetic diversity that gives rise to all those other things.
Well, it could be. William, one of the things that's always intrigued me, and this may be nothing that you dealt with, but it may well be for that matter, is this thing with dragons. I mean, the Chinese think that dragons are like signs of good luck, and in the Middle Ages, knights were always running around to go run down a dragon. What is this continual reference to dragons? What is up with that?
Well, that is interesting that you bring that up. I had an article in Fate magazine several years ago, and it, in lengthened form, it became a chapter in the latest edition of Cameron's Cultures and Concealed Creatures, the 3rd edition. But, it talked about the dragon race. And, historically, these same beings have been associated with reptiles, with dragons. If you look deeper into this, you'll find that it has something to do with their antiquity, how old they are as a species or a race. And so you have to wonder if possibly that's not where this comes from. Because when you deal with dragon lore, for instance, in Europe, dragons are associated with treasures, hidden treasures. They're associated with the deep places of the earth and the waters. Even if they fly, they return to a lair, it's usually in a cave or under the ocean. And this goes all the way back to the idea of the Hydra, the water reptilian thing that had multiple heads. And as you go back and you look at this, you'll find that these motifs appear again and again. The Hydra, for instance, has 7 heads. Well, you go all the way back into Sumerian mythology, 7,000 years or so, and you'll find that there is a group who believed it. They're called the evil old ones, or something to that effect. And there's even a charm against them, and they are called the 7 evil ones of the seas. Of course, we have 7 seas in our lore, that comes down. So, these motifs are highly symbolic. The Old Testament has what it calls Leviathan, and it talks about his many heads. Sometimes it's 9 heads, sometimes it's 7 heads with these types of things. But they seem to be symbolic of empires or kingdoms or some other force that's out there. And again, more UFO sightings have occurred over oceans and large lakes than anywhere else.
Oh, yeah, I've mentioned on other shows, my brother was a sonar man in the Navy, and he told me many years ago, this is in the 70s, but he told me many years ago, he's a lot older now, he said that they would see objects going 100 miles an hour, silent, completely silent, when at the time the quickest Soviet sub was 60 miles an hour. Right. It had a very loud signature, sound signature. So obviously they had, and they could of course distinguish it from whales and whatnot. So this was actually a very common yet bizarre circumstance they noticed.
Right. Well, let me ask you something. Did the publisher get a digital copy or a hard copy of the book to you to examine?
No, he didn't have time to do that. No.
Okay. Well, you'll find it interesting because all these topics are examined at length, including the historical and religious and mythical context, the scientific facts behind these things, and this idea of unseen empires that are here. People say, well, that sounds crazy. That's paranoid. Well, is it really? When you think of all the things that people are now seeing, see, the human population has reached such a point on this planet that even though there are large areas of wilderness left, our technology and our population has reached a point where it's going to logically be increasingly difficult for a hidden society to hide.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're going to be seen more and more, and aspects of a hidden biosphere of our planet, whether it's these things or something that are more along the lines of animals that normally are out of sight, they're going to be seen more and more simply because there are more of us. And I know for a fact, William, that the military, if you had a grapefruit and you shot it 18,000 feet above the United States, right, the Air Force knows it's there. I mean, in other words, just something the size of a grapefruit. So I'm certainly the satellite imagery, they could read books from space or anything else they need to do. So yes, they would have to be able to spy these things, sure. Right. But I could be off base, and I don't mean to step on our presentation tonight, but is it possible that this could be a dimensional bleed over kind of thing, or what? Well, when you look at, for instance, a lot of things that go on with this type of phenomenon, you have things like time dilation effects, things where people have these encounters and then they get back to where they came from and very little time has passed or too much time has passed, or the so-called missing time phenomenon and other things like that. If you go back through ancient accounts, for instance, the so-called fairy lore of North and Western Europe, right, you'll find the same thing, where someone goes to what's the realm of the fairy folk or the Holdra folk in Scandinavia or whatever you want to call them, and again, you find the time dilation effect, where either too much time passes or too little. But when they come back, kind of like the Rip Van Winkle story. The thing about that is that could indicate something to do with the space-time continuum, but it's still localized to the vicinity of the Earth.
Yeah.
It's not something that's far away. It's still something that seems to be localized here. It may have something.
The next dimension might be 5 foot across the room or something.
Right, and it may be that due to something to do with even the electromagnetic field of the Earth, time flows differently there than it does here.
Right.
The Earth is a very powerful electromagnet. And here's the thing about this, and this is something people should think about, whether it's so-called UFO occupants or any other type of anomalous being that just doesn't make sense in the context of our everyday world, but it seems to be overly interested in us. If there's a race of vertebrate humanoids of any kind that's capable of interbreeding or so-called hybridizing with human beings, for instance, then it has to be a closely related species. It has to be.
Sure.
This is a fact. Okay, like I said, if they were truly alien from some different star system, they would be able to, if they could come here, they would be able to repair their own DNA. I mean,
I would think so. I remember I've heard that many times, the old story about the Greys are here to, grab up some